Hi and welcome back to another video. In this video I have with me the Sigma 56mm contemporary lens for Sony APS-C cameras. It's one of three lenses. They're very sharp, very fast, aperture of 1.4, and I think they're amazing value for your money. But how does the 56mm compare to the 55 Sony Zeiss lens, which is regarded to be one of the best lenses for Sony cameras? Let's go ahead and find out. Okay, so these are the boxes side by side. As you can see, the Sony one is about twice the size of Sigma's. Let's open the Sony one and see what's inside. So we get some bubble wrap inside, a Sony bag, and a lens hood. The lens hood is what looks to be a combination of metal and plastic. I don't know whether it's fully metal, and some of the parts that look like plastic are just coated. But this is the lens hood. Okay, let's have a look. There's also some manuals in different languages and a certificate for the lens. And let's pop everything back inside and move to the Sigma one. Part of the reason why the Sigma one is half the size, it's because the lens is a little bit more compact than the Sony one. And also you don't get as many things as you do in the Sony box. So you do get what seems to be a message to the buyer, a manual and a certificate. And if you dig down a little bit more, you get a lens hood which is wrapped in a plastic bag. And that's everything inside the box. Both of them are made of metal, apart from the Sigma, which has a focusing ring made of rubber. So on the Sony one, you get a Sony branding, the minimal focus distance and the serial number, and the Zeiss branding as well, the aligning dot, and then 1.855. On the Sigma, you get the Sigma branding with a serial number, the model of the lens, which is 018, and then the minimum and maximum focus distance, the aligning dot, and the C, which stands for contemporary, and then 56 1.4, the CDN, and the diameter of the filter thread, which is 55. The Sigma is made in Japan, whereas the Sony is made in Thailand. Moving on to flare and ghosting. For some reason in this test, the Sigma does a little bit better than the Sony. But I know for a fact that the Sigma has plenty of flare when you're pointing it at a strong source of light. When I first got the lens, I was testing the flare on it. There was the sun coming through the window, and I was taking this video of my daughter, and there was a lens flare all across the frame, as you can see in this video. Moving on to distortion, I was actually surprised to see distortion on the Sigma lens, given the fact that it's a 56mm, but it has a pin cushion distortion, as you can see on the picture on the right hand side. There isn't any on the Sony as far as I'm aware, but there is on the Sigma, which is not very bad, but it's quite significant. It's something that can be fixed in post, but I'd rather not have it. So if you go into camera raw, you can apply a little bit of a barrel distortion, and that's going to correct it. That's something you can do in Lightroom as well, I believe. I don't use Lightroom as much, and I don't know whether you have this function. Okay, moving on to sharpness. Surprisingly, there is more sharpness on the Sigma one, and there's also better contrast. The Zeiss lens also seems to have some color fringing, as you can see on the letters. I was actually surprised by this, and I've done this test several times, and the Sigma seems to be just as sharp at 1.4 as the Zeiss at 1.8. But if you stop down the aperture further on the Sigma one, it gets a little bit sharper. But it's not all milk and honey, because the Sigma one is only sharper in the center of the frame. If you move to the corners of the frame, the Sigma gets softer to the point that it's not matching the sharpness on the Zeiss anymore. So it's sharper in the center but softer in the corners, as you can see in this detail here. But if we move down to the bottom corner of the box, you will see that not only that it gets softer, there is also a little bit of distortion, and that's something you can notice when I zoom out on the edges of the box as well. In terms of chromatic aberration, I pushed these lenses as much as I could and I couldn't get much. I would say there is a little bit on the Zeiss more than there is on the Sigma, but there's very little on both of them. They're doing great when it comes to chromatic aberration. In terms of autofocus, both of these lenses perform very good. They're both accurate and snappy, and they're both keeping the subject in focus consistently. But I would say the Zeiss has the edge when it comes to autofocus, because it seems to keep me, as I come towards the camera and walk away from it, better in focus, and it's also a little bit faster. Both of them are using stepping motors and they're completely silent. You don't get any noise with these lenses, which is great. But like I said, I would give the edge to the Zeiss when it comes to autofocus. In terms of breathing, both of them have some breathing. The one thing I don't like about the Zeiss is the fact that it has a very short focus throw, and it's not as linear as the Sigma one. The Sigma one has a longer focus throw and it has a more linear response to manual focus. But I would say the Sigma has a little bit more breathing than the Zeiss. Both these lenses have beautiful bokeh, as you can see in this image over here. Obviously the background is a little bit more blown out on the Sigma because of the 1.4 aperture. But the other thing I noticed on the Zeiss, it has a little bit more contrast compared to the Sigma. And also the colors on the Zeiss seem to be a bit colder than the ones on the Sigma. When it comes to the bokeh balls, the Zeiss seem to have this onion ring character to them. And I'm wondering whether that's due to the way the elements have been polished. The bokeh balls on the Sigma, obviously they're a bit larger due to the faster aperture. I would say the bokeh balls keep their roundness on the Zeiss even when you stop down the aperture all the way to around 4.5, whereas the Sigma seem to be losing their roundness from around 3.2. Both of these lenses have weather sealing, although the Zeiss doesn't have any gasket. The Sigma one seems to have some sort of a gasket which is not sticking out a lot, so I don't know whether that qualifies as a gasket or not. And none of these lenses have image stabilization. I made a list with the results from each of these tests, so you can see which of these lenses are better, which one is the better value, should you consider buying one. So in terms of price, the Zeiss is the more expensive. It's almost twice the price of the Sigma. Having said that, the Zeiss can be used both on full frame cameras and on APS-C crop sensor ones, whereas the Sigma one is only made for APS-C crop sensor cameras. When it comes to using these lenses on a crop sensor camera, on the Zeiss you get the equivalent of a 2.7 aperture lens, and on the Sigma you get the equivalent of a 2.1 aperture lens, because obviously you need to apply the crop factor to the aperture of the lens, and 1.5 times 1.4 equals 2.1, and 1.5 times 1.8 is 2.7. If you found this video useful and if you learned anything from it, you can show your appreciation by hitting the thumbs up. If you have any comments, you can leave them down below. And for more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care now.